My in-laws called me greedy at every gathering, even though I paid the bills, the rent, and the medical expenses. I stayed silent until the day the account was frozen, and they finally realized who really had the money. The account freeze message was something I read in the parking lot, as I was walking out of the grocery store. The cold was seeping into my bones, and in my hands were bags filled with cheap cereal, discounted milk, and the medications I bought every month for my mother-in-law. The words were on the screen, but the real shock was the silence that spread inside me. I understood immediately that everything was about to change, and maybe this was the moment I had been waiting for years, without even knowing I was waiting. They called me greedy in every gathering. At the dining table, in the church parking lot after Sunday service, or at a child's birthday party. "You love money too much," my mother-in-law would say with a laugh, as if it were a harmless joke. My father-in-law would look away. My brother-in-law would stir his tea and smile. And my husband, Dan, would stay quiet. That silence was what slowly consumed me. I never answered back, because the math was on my side. Bills were in my name, rent was paid by me, medical expenses were covered by me, and still, I was greedy. We lived in an old apartment outside Columbus. Nail marks from a previous tenant covered the walls, and the refrigerator made the same loud rattling noise every night. I left home at 6 every morning, changed 2 buses, and returned exhausted in the evening. Dan worked delivery jobs when he could, sometimes picked up construction work. Whenever he found something, he'd say, "Next month things will be fine." I would nod, because nodding is cheap. Speaking costs more. My mother-in-law's health was always fragile. Insurance coverage had gaps. I paid for her medication with my credit card, paid appointment fees out of pocket. When my father-in-law fell behind on rent, I said, "Just this month," and that one month quietly turned into a year. I built a spreadsheet, silently. I didn't tell anyone. Because when you're a woman and you talk about money, you're either called controlling or greedy. One Sunday at church, after the pastor's sermon, my mother-in-law said loudly, "Some people hold on to money too tightly. They care more about cash than family." Eyes turned toward me. I smiled and passed the plate forward. On the way home, Dan said, "She's just stressed." I replied, "So am I." The conversation ended there, just like most things between us. The story behind the account freeze was simple, though the truth was complicated. I had opened a joint account in my name because Dan's credit score carried old scars. His paycheck went there. Bills were paid from there. One day, my father-in-law withdrew a large amount temporarily, claiming it was for home repairs. A receipt never came. Then another withdrawal happened. I noticed. I didn't ask. Because asking questions ruins gatherings. The bank sent an alert, "Suspicious transactions." I called. They froze the account. I exhaled, for the first time with peace. It sounds strange, but when everything stops, the noise stops too. When I got home, I set the grocery bags down. Dan asked, "What happened?" I placed my phone in front of him. He read it, then went quiet. The same old silence, but this time the weight had shifted. A little later, my mother-in-law called, her voice sharp. "Why isn't the card working?" I said, "The account is frozen." "Why?" "Because I asked where the money went." That night, for the first time, I put the numbers on the table. No lecture. Just facts. Rent. Utilities. Medications. Transactions. Dates. I said, "I'm not greedy. I'm tired." Dan lowered his eyes. My father-in-law said, "We're family." I answered, "Family isn't afraid of accountability." The next day, I went to the bank. A young officer looked at me and said, "You protected yourself." There was no poetry in that sentence, but it was true. I opened a new account, only in my name. I requested the old one be closed. I called my mother-in-law's doctor and set up a payment plan. I told my father-in-law, "This is the last month." My voice was soft, but steady. Rumors spread at church. Some said I broke the family apart. Some said money had revealed my true colors. I said nothing. I changed my shift, took overtime. I joined a free financial workshop at a community center. There, I met a woman whose eyes carried the same exhaustion. She said, "You're not alone." It wasn't a miracle, just truth. And sometimes, that's enough. Dan began to change, slowly. He found steady work. One evening, he said, "I was wrong. I didn't listen to you." I replied, "Now listen." We started counseling, not cheap, but necessary. We set rules. About money. About respect. Months later, my mother-in-law apologized. Halfway. I accepted, halfway. We weren't healed, but we were honest. And honesty carries a strange warmth. One day, I stood in that same parking lot again and checked my phone. This time there was no alert. Just a balance. Small, but mine. I breathed in. I said to myself, not greed, boundaries. And for the first time, I felt the difference clearly in my heart.